KOCT, its board of directors, staff, and the City of Oceanside do not support nor promote any candidates. We provide the following program as a public service for voters. All candidates have been invited to participate in this program, but not all were able to or chose to do so.
Good afternoon and welcome to KOCT Election 2024 coverage of the November elections for Oceanside City races. I'm Kent Davey. I'm a member of the KOCT Board of Directors and a retired newspaper editor. I'm joined today by fellow board member Amy Forsyth, an author, speaker, and veteran Marine combat correspondent. We first would like to thank Veterans Association of North County for hosting this. I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for watching this. Amy and I will act as moderators of today's forum for the District 4 City Council race. We have the honor of talking with Peter Weiss, the incumbent, Omar Hashimi, excuse me, I apologize for that, and Amber Niatoa. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to do an opening statement, beginning first with Peter, then down the table. Amy and I will engage the candidates for about 50 minutes of question and conversation on issues of importance to Oceanside viewers. We're not going to time the answers, but let the candidates speak and attempt to respect each other's time and opportunity to comment. So let's begin with opening statements. Peter.
Thank you, Kent. My name is Peter Weiss, and I'm on the City Council currently representing District 4. As a proven leader, I am humbled by the support and encouragement I have received from residents, businesses, and community groups to run for re-election. I want to thank all of you for your support. I'm running for re-election to continue the progress Oceanside has made in recent years. Civil engineer by training, I have decades of experience as a leader in our city. I spent almost 7 years as city manager, so I'm familiar with all aspects of city government. I have the skills, experience, and unique qualifications to represent the city. My priorities include continuing to address homelessness, public safety, code enforcement, and blight elimination, improving our parks and youth recreation programs. I bring a sensible and balanced approach to issues and understand that compromise is necessary to improve the quality of life for all. The local level is no place for extreme positions. We need to be able to work together and develop a team atmosphere where we can collectively advance Oceanside. I'm committed to maintaining the stability and positive investment environment we have created so that we can enhance the programs and services we provide to the community. And we need to focus on keeping small businesses strong and making it easier for entrepreneurs to start up. Small business is the cornerstone to a healthy economy. But we also need to make sure that our public safety programs have what they need to take care of us and continue to provide for our safety needs. Thank you.
Amber.
Thank you so much. My name is Amber Niatoa, and I'm running for City Council District 4. Oh, thank you. It's time to breathe new life and leadership into City Council. Longevity doesn't always work on our behalf. My incumbent opponent and the current council have given us a new sport and concert venue, and that seems nice, right? Except they didn't finish the job. They gave the developers zero responsibility when it comes to parking and traffic. It's been a windfall for developers without mindset of the community, leaving us holding the bag, and that's part of a pattern. In summer of 2021, I worked with neighbors in District 4 to block a 24-hour Amazon truck depot from moving into our community. It too provided zero tax dollars in terms of sales tax, zero money for road repairs, low-wage jobs, not to mention compromising safety for our seniors and school children in the area. My neighbors and colleagues saw my fighting spirit and asked me to run for office. And it was a natural fit for my background in this community. I was raised here in Oceanside by a single mother and graduated from El Camino High School. And although we faced housing insecurity and food insecurity along the way, my mother instilled the ethos of giving back, fostering the belief of community engagement that I now teach my children and students in the classroom. With my mother's encouragement, I went on to pursue a master's degree in sociology, and I'm a professor of sociology at Maricosta College, where I also graduated from. I own a small business centered in mindfulness, as well as raised 2 small children here in our city. Excuse me. These things give me a unique qualifications and ability to represent our city for community members at all levels. I promise to fight for our environment and protect our natural resources. Remember when we used to be able to see the beach from downtown? Now we got 2 large hotels. Excuse me. Now we have 2 large hotels. Our current incumbent in that regard has not been community-centered. I want to make sure that we get good paying jobs as well as tax dollars for all of the things that us Oceansiders give up. Peter was the only member of our council who did not show up when our iconic pier was on fire, but I promise to put our community first and always show up for us. Vote for me in November. I promise to put the community first. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Omar.
Hello, Oceanside and my District 4 neighbors. My name is Omar Hashimi, and I'm running for City Council District 4. I'm a proud husband and father, an officer in the United States Army Reserves, a small business owner, and I bring with me over 18 years of experience in the housing and real estate industry. Look, it's time for a change. You've seen what the current council has been doing for the last 10, 15 years, and guess what? It's not enough. My top 3 priorities are housing and homelessness, small business growth, and public safety. You can learn more about my campaign at omarforoceanside.com. That's Omar, the number 4, oceanside.com. And you can read about my top 3 priorities and plan of action. Vote Omar for Oceanside City Council District 4. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you for outlining your priorities and your objectives going forward. Thank you for being here. You've mentioned small business, public safety, development, but if you could provide our viewers at home really a snapshot of your leadership style and your communication style to move your priorities ahead. What would distinguish you from the pack, and what makes you unique, and what people need to know about you and your leadership style going forward? Peter, we'll start with you.
So I would say my leadership style is situational depending upon the issue at hand. Any one council member cannot do anything on their own. It requires compromise, reaching out to get at least 3 votes to do anything, to get something done. So, and unfortunately, as a council member, we do not have the luxury of getting all 5 council members in one room and having a conversation about something that's going to come to the council in a vote. I can talk to one other council member, then neither myself nor that other council member can have a conversation on that same topic with any other council member. So it has to be done in a public setting, and it can be messy. And sometimes it comes across as messy. But it's the looking at the different situations that come up, and in some cases it would be autocratic, some cases it's trying to get consensus, and it's trying to find a compromise to advance something. And I think I have the ability to at least look at issues from a different perspective, kind of anal because I'm an engineer, but the reality is it's trying to find a way to get something to advance without losing everything.
Thank you. Amber?
My leadership style is collaborative and mindful. I recognize that we are dealing with issues for people all across Oceanside, from our unhoused neighbors to our corporate interests. And with that, my leadership style is versatile. I'm going to make sure that we bring in outside sources and work harder for funding in our community than our current council representatives have. I'm going to make sure that we collaborate with the community. My mission is to hold quarterly town halls for Oceanside D4 so that we can keep the conversation going. I was asked by neighbors to run, and I will center the community's voice in this race, making sure that all the advancements and growth within our community keep our community centered while providing things for us to be able to thrive and not just survive here.
Thank you. Omar?
My leadership style is listening and situational awareness. I've been talking to my neighbors in District 4 and actually all residents throughout Oceanside over the past several months, and they keep bringing up some of the same key issues, and these issues have been ignored by our City Council. So I want to lead by listening to our residents and actually taking that to City Council. For years they've been ignored, and that can't continue. We have to address the issues that are at hand. starting with our #1 biggest issue in Oceanside, which is housing and homelessness. And with my background, I'm the person that can go to council and work in a collaborative effort with other council members to get things done. Right now, if you pay attention to how City Council operates, it's like a reality TV show. They show up, they argue with each other for hours, and then nothing gets done. I'm the type of candidate that's willing to work with both sides of the spectrum and get things done for the sake of the residents, and that's what I'm going to do. My only motive is to represent District 4 residents and the city and residents of the City of Oceanside, and that's what I'm going to do. Thank you.
Omar, I'd like to ask you, with regard to homelessness, recently the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that cities may ban homeless people from sleeping outside in public places, in parks. Should the city adopt and pursue that kind of policy with regard to its homeless?
So it's a complex issue. Homelessness isn't a one-size-fits-all type of solution. It's a multifaceted approach we have to take. I know that the governor has issued a statewide mandate saying cities need to get rid of the encampments, and that if they don't, they're going to lose funding. I personally believe that it's a problem that we have to take step by step. #1, we need to work more with nonprofits like the Interfaith Community Services and the Navigation Center, which is our local homeless shelter, and help expand those projects. Because without adequate housing, without proper shelters, how can we just end encampments and push people out? I don't think it's the right way to approach it. I think we have to be more strategic and go about it that way.
What do you do if someone doesn't want service? I want to be homeless.
Well, they have to want service because we can't force people to take service. So there are, like for example, the Greenbrier Village project. It's a 60-unit affordable housing project that they're developing right now off of Oceanside Boulevard, and it's for housing-ready homeless families. And so that approach is working. But again, we can't force people to take the assistance. We have to do it for people that are ready and willing, and then we have to come together and create a plan for those who are unwilling.
Amber.
I do not believe that simply destroying homeless encampments is the way for us to solve our problems. However, I do recognize the public safety and health concerns around such situations. I think we need to work, like Mr. Hashimi said, in partnership with our local organizations to make sure that we are treating unhoused neighbors with dignity and respect. The majority of them do want housing. The majority of them do want help. So for those that don't, we can deal with on an individual basis. But I think that it is vital that we recognize that just putting people into 30-day shelters and releasing them back out is re-traumatizing and exasperating our problem. And providing long-term shelter services is where we will see a difference in this. But I don't believe that simply destroying encampments and shuffling people from one side of the riverbed to the other side of the riverbed is going to be productive.
Does your answer imply that you would like to see a change from the federal policy of housing first?
I would like to see a collaborative effort with government on all levels for us to recognize the layers of this and not criminalize everyone who's unhoused. Because I'm a professor of sociology at MiraCosta. I get emails every semester with students who are talking to me about living in cars or being unhoused. I faced housing insecurity with my mother, who worked very hard with special needs children throughout her career, but just didn't pay well enough for us to be able to survive all of the time. So I recognize that this demographic does deserve housing first, because these are valuable members and valuable contributing members of our community.
Peter.
So we have had a camping ban in place for a number of years. In fact, we were one of the first cities in San Diego County to actually adopt a camping ban. Unfortunately, there are, as was mentioned, there are homeless individuals who refuse services. And I would offer to my both opponents, at some point, if you want to do a ride-along with our one of our homeless outreach teams, it's very interesting because they know most of the people who are homeless. And if you're out there and you want services, we have many services that are available to you. But there are those that are chronically homeless that do not want help. And unfortunately, what's starting to happen, and we label as kind of a compassion fatigue, the businesses down by the airport industrial park, There are now businesses out off of Oceanside Boulevard and College that are facing increased homeless pressure because it's playing whack-a-mole. Unfortunately, there's no longer any accountability for the criminal homeless. So those that are criminals, the jails will no longer book them in the jails. So in the past, if they were arrested for any type of criminal activity, they could go to jail or you avail yourself to services. And we have services. We have Interfaith. We have the San Diego Rescue Mission. So now it's a matter of how do we find and hold people who are criminals, not just necessarily homeless, the criminal homeless accountable. And there needs to be some accountability so that we can push them into either the care court that the governor initiated, which we still haven't gotten yet, or into some other programs or services. Living on the street should not be acceptable. We need to find a way to help these people to get back into society.
Okay, thank you for responding to those. We're going to shift gears here and talk about our beaches. And all roads here in Oceanside lead to the beach and our quality of life, and it relates to tourism and the travel industry. In February, the City Council unanimously approved a $30 to $50 million sand restoration project for Oceanside beaches. How does your position on replenishing sand on our beaches differ from your opponent? We'll start with you, Peter, and we'll go down the line.
Well, I don't know that I can answer it because I don't know what their position is. But my position is sand replenishment alone is not enough. Over the last 40 years, we have dumped millions and millions of dollars worth of sand on the beach only to watch it wash away every 3 to 5 years. To me, there needs to be some type of way to retain the sand on the beach, which is what was part of the project that we approved, which is essentially it's a physical structure to help keep the sand on the beach. Honestly, right now, I don't have to worry about the beach because south of Sea Gaze, there is no beach. And it's one of the things that I think, and I raised it during that meeting, is a priority. We cannot wait for however long it's going to take to build these structures, whatever they may be, to get sand on the beach south of Sea Gaze, all the way to the south city limits. I think there needs to be alternatives, and I think staff is looking at, they have identified an off-site source of sand that we can hopefully dredge and put it on the beach. But we need to do something because sand on the beach is one of our biggest economic drivers. Tourism is one of our biggest economic drivers, and without sand on the beach, it is a problem for not just the people who live there, but the people who come to visit.
Okay, Amber?
Yes, we need to restore the sand on our beach, as Peter said, not just by putting it back. I've lived in Oceanside since 1989. I've watched every winter as we pump sand onto the beach to watch it get washed away again. So I'm a fan of projects that restore natural sand dunes and things that restore the natural habitat along our coastline so that we may have sand that lasts for generations to come. We have a risk of the strand being washed away. We have a risk of the tourists not having sand. But more importantly, the locals who choose and love living here also are losing it. So having natural resources in place and the funding to build these things is a top priority of my campaign.
Okay, Omar.
So yes, sand on the beaches, it's important. That's a big part of our city. But here's the thing. Sand retention is a worldwide phenomenon. It's almost impossible to keep sand on a beach permanently. So it's going to continuously be a problem. What we have to do is look to the experts like we're doing right now with the international coastal management team who won the competition. They proposed that we create an artificial reef, and it would slow down sand that goes from the beach obviously into the water. It's not a permanent solution, but they're experts. It's the latest thing in technology that they can come up with. And until more technology and more advancements come out, that's the direction we're going in right now. And like I said, there's no permanent solution to it. It's an ongoing issue that we'll have to keep getting better and better at.
Amber, recently, within the last year and a half or so, Sandad decided to abandon its proposal to assess a mileage assessment on drivers, basically a mileage tax. Part of the rationale for proposing it was that as people move to EVs and hybrids, there's fewer and fewer gallons of gas having tax that money presumably going into transportation repair of various sorts. Was that a good idea to to do away with that idea. The corollary to that is that there is a major G on this November ballot that would add a half-cent sales tax to support Sandag projects. Are you in favor of that? What do you think about both of those ideas?
Well, first, I believe that it was a good idea not to propose that mileage tax because it disproportionately impacts those low-wage service workers and lower-end members of our community who aren't able to upgrade to the EVs. It also, we're not getting the money from all of the people who can afford to move over to EVs. And as great as EVs are for our air, unfortunately, they are heavier and cause more damage to our roads. And the number one expense everywhere is road repair. So if we're pushing people to this modality but don't have a long-term solution with how to deal with the infrastructure problems it's going to cause, I don't support the mileage tax that doesn't include EV vehicles. In terms of the 5-cent sales tax from Sandag, I actually do support that because it is going to be fairly distributed to everyone and allow us to make the road repairs and work on microtransit districts and the things that will help us to become more less car dependent locally and get around without being in our cars as much.
Peter?
I do not support the mileage tax as proposed by Sandag. I do think there needs to be some way of looking at a fair distribution of how electric vehicles pay their share to fix roads. But I also think if there is going to be some type of a mileage tax, then they should abolish the gas tax entirely. So you can't have both. But as proposed by Sandag, I do not support it. And the same with Sandag's half-cent sales tax, I don't support it simply because I have lost credibility in the manner in which Sandag spends our taxpayer money.
You say you do or you do not? I'm sorry,
Support
do not.
Sandag getting more money.
Okay.
Until they can fix the problems they've had with the toll roads and all of the other issues that they have had within their raising money and spending money and looking at their spending plans, I don't support giving them any more money.
Omar?
I don't support the tax. I think it's unfair to those who have long commutes to work and back, and they're just trying to make ends meet. They don't have any more money to keep paying taxes like that. But what I do support is trying to get more public transportation in play. That's the real issue here. Is we need to stop putting so much focus on cars, and we need to start looking to the future of how are we going to solve this in the long run. And I think the answer is more public transportation, more access to public transportation, and fewer cars on the road. If I can get one car off the road and that person in public transportation, that solves the problem just this much. But if I get 10 more people, that's 10 times the solution. And so if we can get our minds going in that direction, I think that's the better way forward.
So I heard you say you think that getting rid of the mileage assessment was a good idea. What about the 5-cent sales tax in Measure G?
I don't like raising sales taxes in a time where inflation is going through the roof, where interest rates are sky high. I think we can revisit this when things normalize, but right now I'm not in favor of any taxes that can possibly put a burden on people that are already struggling right now.
Corollary to this discussion would be, are you satisfied with the progress over the last, let's say 20, 25 years on the I-578 intersection?
No, absolutely not. I'm not happy with what's been going on with that. But this is exactly what I'm saying, is people that were on the council, people that were on these boards, Sandag, 15, 20 years ago should have been thinking ahead into the future. Now we're here to deal with this problem. And so I'm saying, like, I don't think that the tax for mileage and the gas tax and those kind of things is the solution. I think we need to move forward in a different direction. And they didn't do it back then, but we need to start it now.
Amber, same question?
Can you repeat it?
I'm curious as to how you feel about the progress or the lack of progress of solving the I-578 intersection problem. 78 backs up to a stoplight to get onto I-5 South.
Yeah. What progress? I am fortunate enough to be able to work from home, but every time I do have to go somewhere, I am stuck in that traffic and amazed at how every time we come up with a solution for traffic, we just end up with more traffic. I actually have legitimate solutions to help us be less car dependent, specifically within the city of Oceanside. But for the commuters, that's why we got to get people off of the roads and bridge the last mile gap for people to get to transit stops and get to transit spaces, as well as make sure, as Peter was talking about, that we have the organizations in place like SANDAG and working with us, that they are doing things that are feasible. We've seen the expansion of the carpool lanes going up and down I-5 that we're supposed to eliminate some of that, and it still backs up right when you get to Camp Pendleton and doesn't free up until afterwards. And so even the adding of carpool lanes hasn't been a solution that has reduced the traffic impact for day-to-day commuters.
I-578.
I'm not satisfied with it.
What can we do?
What can we do? So when the former CEO of SANDAG was hired, the 78 RDO interchange, 78 widening, and the I-5 widening through Oceanside were planned for everywhere between 2025 and 2030. He came on board and immediately took all of the road expansion projects off the books. He and the SANDAG board decided they were no longer going to do any all-purpose lanes, only HOV lanes, and we had pushed hard to at least get the environmental documents started. So for the I-5 widening, it was done. There were preliminary plans done for the interchange as well. Unfortunately, with SANDAG's lack of sufficient forecasting of their money, those projects are now, who knows when, I think the interchange is now looking at 2050. And that's one of those things that's so far down the road that it may never happen. So part of it is getting, the same thing like at SANDAG, getting consensus that road improvement projects, and these were projects that were promised to the taxpayers for the Transnet extension. So they were specifically on the ballot to fund that Transnet extension, and SANDAG has not fulfilled their obligations to the voters, which is one of the reasons I will not support another SANDAG tax measure. Until they fulfill the promises they've made to the voters in the past, they shouldn't be trusted with any more money.
Okay, thank you. For our viewers at home who always have questions about public safety, you've all mentioned those in your opening remarks. Crime here in Oceanside is reported down. Violent crime down 9% last year. Gang-related crime down 12%. Catalytic converter theft down 53%. What do you think has contributed to these statistics, and what can the city be doing more, and how will you stand out or be different from your opponents that can sustain these gains and move in that right direction of lowering crime? We'll start with you, Peter, since you're the incumbent.
So the catalytic converter one is pretty interesting because we have one of our crime analysts that actually put together a program to etch the catalytic converter so they can be traced. So you can actually register it. So I think that has been a help in at least deterring some of that. But the bigger issue is giving the police chief and the city manager the authority to say, we got your back. So if there are programs you want to do, particularly for gang crimes, for any kind of criminal activity, we got your back. Do what you have to do to make things work. And publicly, the council will have your back in case because at some point something's going to go wrong. But it's not a blame game to the police chief or the officers. It's we got your back, and giving them the authority to go out and do their jobs as best they can.
Okay, Amber, thank you.
Well, you know, I'm a sociologist by trade, and so I'm well aware that crime has been lower in Oceanside, and it's a beautiful thing to see for our public and our community. I think a big contribution to that has been our Measure X funding. We've been able to, you know, have better homeless outreach, so we have reduced number of crime in that community, as well as provide things like after-school services recently and such for our youth. So I think continuing to have Measure X serve our community in that way will continue us on this path, as well as the police chief being centered in community policing. I think when our police officers are active and engaged in our community and at public events, it creates a partnership with the community where we can rely and trust on them. So I've been in Oceanside for a long time, and we didn't always have that trust in the community with our police department. So it's very nice to see that trust in 2024, and I look forward to us building even more trust and continuing to keep our community crime-free.
Thank you. Omar?
Yes, so crime is down. That's a great thing, and I think we owe it to our police department. They're doing a great job. There's always room for improvement, but for the most part, from what I've seen Oceanside go through in the early 2000s to where it's at now, major improvement. So we'll continue to support our police department. And sorry, is there technical difficulties?
Okay.
Okay. We'll continue to support our police department, and as Amber mentioned, we want to bridge the gap between community and the police department. We want to make sure that we have events that they can both go to and meet and get more comfortable with one another, because police department that's more involved with the community is going to create a more vibrant and safe community and a safe feel for all residents of the City of Oceanside and District 4 as well.
Amber raised the topic of Measure X, which is inside the city's budget. I think it was originally anticipated to be about $10 million a year, and I think this budget year it's close to $20 million, and it gets funneled into various kinds of programs. That's on the November ballot for its extension for 10 years. Do you support it, and where should the money go? What should be done with the Measure X money?
Yes, I support Measure X. I think the city needed the money, and we saw over the last 7 years that they held that money accountable. So we know where the money went. It was spent well. It was spent on public safety programs. It was spent on our police and fire department and social services and things of that nature. And up. So I believe the original intent was for us to bring in around $11 million a year. Now it's around $20 million a year, and I think it'll continue to grow. It's a big help for the city. We need it, and I am a supporter of Measure X.
Peter?
I supported putting it back on the ballot. My issue was I wanted to make sure that no more than 25% of future revenues go to personnel costs. If the residents are going to tax themselves, then it should go to those priorities that the community wants. And those priorities were, the top two were infrastructure, public safety, and homelessness. To me, we have a list of unfunded capital projects. And I'll just pick on one for example, Park Site 1 on El Corazon. The original estimate was around 4, I think it's over $8.5–9 million now. We are desperately in need of a new police station. So to me, portions of that money, obviously not all of it, should be allocated to projects that will provide a broader benefit to the community.
Okay. Amber?
Yes, I fully support Measure X continuing to be a resource for our Oceanside community. Different than the general fund, Measure X gives our citizens some oversight and say-so on how the money is spent, and I think that's a part of what makes community engagement possible, for community to be able to say how they want their tax dollars spent and not just leaving it to the legislators to decide. So us to continue to fund things in relation to public safety, but also expand into things outside of the downtown area, creating art as infrastructure in all of the districts, which are known to reduce crime or keep crime reduced and engage our youth, as well as, again, like I said, my major benefit in supporting Measure X is the community say-so factor. Having citizens have a say-so in how our money is spent is vital, because we live and work here and operate day to day and know what's necessary and needed for us. And we have a big general fund that the city council gets to decide what to do with for the most part. But what makes Measure X special and why I support it is the fact that community has a say-so. And if the community isn't satisfied when the time comes, we can decide that we no longer want to support this tax.
Measure X implies that the city sales tax stays at 8.25 cents or percent. Both currently, pending November, I guess, in a couple of cases, both Carlsbad and San Marcos has 7.75%. So there's a competitive advantage, presumably, for retailers in those two cities over Oceanside. Does that concern you?
You know, Oceanside is the third largest city in San Diego County, so while it might sound concerning, we have been growing and evolving with this in place, and it is still lower than other cities in the city of San Diego in the area. So while our direct neighbors might have it a little bit cheaper, who's to say it will stay that way? And when they raise their taxes, they probably won't have a say-so in how that money is spent the way we do with Measure X.
Okay. Omar, same question.
We get so much out of Measure X. And as Amber mentioned, we are a relatively lower tax rate than other cities. maybe not 7.75, but at 8.25, we are still relatively low, and we get a lot more out of it. And I think for that reason, it's worth it.
Okay, Peter?
I think both Escondido and San Marcos, I think, have a 1 cent sales tax on their ballot. And I think Carlsbad has already been in discussions about adding one to their, obviously not this November, but to raise their sales tax. But no, I'm not too concerned that there's a competitive advantage or disadvantage. If you just look at the sales tax growth over the last 5 years, you can see that it's not that big a concern to spenders as well, because the numbers have gone up so much. The same thing with our business community. If you look at the total number of businesses that have opened and jobs that we've created, the sales tax, to me, is not a significant issue.
Okay.
Speaking of spending, we're going to talk a little bit about the pier repair. And the Oceanside Pier suffered a considerable damage after a fire in late April. Estimates for repair range anywhere from $17 to $20 million. Where will the money come from? What do you think the timeline is? And do you support the repairs? Or what is your vision going forward for the pier that's feasible, that the public can support? And what are you hearing from your constituents in your districts about what they have expressed to you? Peter, we'll start with you.
So we do not yet have a comprehensive damage assessment. So we don't know what all needs to be done. So it needs, all of the debris that's out there needs to be cleared. Then they need to bring in structural engineers to look at the pilings, because if the pilings have to be replaced, that changes the whole dynamic of what can or cannot be done with the pier. The council voted to repair the pier. We have a lease agreement with the tenant of the former restaurant, and in that lease agreement, that tenant has the right to abate the rent and extend the lease once the city says we're going to repair the pier. If we just said we're not repairing the pier, then they have the right to terminate the lease. They put us on notice that if once the city said we're repairing the pier, they want to retain that lease. Now, they get a rent abatement until it's repaired, but it's within their sole discretion to say we want to come back as a restaurant.
Okay, and your position of how you would support that, or what does the community feel is best for the pier?
Well, we had gotten lots of input on different things. One included a Ferris wheel. The reality is, unless the restaurant owner decides I'm not coming back, we have no choice but to allow him to come back.
Okay, thank you. Amber?
Well, we don't know what it's going to cost yet. We don't know how much insurance is going to cover from that. So until we know what it's going to cost and what the insurance is going to cover, we don't have an exact bill to know where the money is going to come from or how much money we need. I'm assuming we could probably use some of our Measure X funds for that, but the hope is that insurance will cover the majority of the damage and leave us with not that large of a bill considering the work that needs to be done. If the restaurant at the end of the pier is deciding to come back, that's wonderful. I'd like it to be a restaurant that is accessible and affordable to our locals, not just something high-end that is for tourist communities. And if the restaurant decided not to come back, I'd like us to see us make it even more economically feasible for small businesses, perhaps making it more like several brine box type restaurants at the end, making it more of a food court type community. So that way we can get foodies, tourists, and locals alike back to the end of the pier where we belong, enjoying this great weather in Oceanside.
Okay, Omar?
Can you repeat the question?
The vision for the pier, the funding for the restoration, and what would you support in terms of agreeing or voting for a certain way? What are you hearing from your constituents in your area about what they say and think about the pier?
So, again, there's not enough information for us to make a determination on the expense part of it. From what I understood, I believe the pier had insurance and the restaurants were insured. So once we determine how insured they were and what the damages are and what it's going to cost the city to make those repairs, then we can revisit that situation. As far as the restaurants and what was there and what we'd like to see next, I would like to see the brine box go back up. I thought it was a beautiful restaurant. I was actually at that restaurant a week before that that devastating fire happened. So I'd like to see, it's a small business. I'd like to see them back in business. And as far as the bigger restaurant, I mean, that's between whatever lease agreement they had with the city and how they'll go about that. And that's all I got for now.
Okay, thank you.
Omar, the city is planning a public workshop later this year or early next year to hear from the public about a general plan update that I think is on the books. What elements do you think need to be considered? Are there major changes that you would like to see in that general plan as it rolls forward and is adopted?
Sure, I think the biggest thing for me is the housing element. We haven't, the RENA numbers, we haven't met those. We're not even close, not for regular development of housing all across all income levels, but also for affordable and very affordable housing projects. I believe on the affordable side, we've only met 7% of our goal, and we're still thousands of houses short for the main housing element. And I believe that by 2029, we're not going to get there. It's a state mandated element that has to be done, but we're not going to get there. And the reason why is because our council chose to ignore these warning signs and these issues 10, 15 years ago. If our council paid attention to them then, we'd probably have much better progress now. So we're coming in as candidates because we're concerned residents. We left it up to this council for years to deal with it. You've had your opportunity, you've had your chance. This is the outcome. And if you were doing a good job, I wouldn't be sitting up here wasting my time. I would let you continue doing your job. But because we have a dysfunctional council, it's time for a new vision, a new perspective, a new candidate with fresh ideas that can help move this city forward. Let's get the job done.
Amber?
I have to agree with Mr. Hashimi here that the housing element is extremely concerning as it relates to here. Oops, excuse me. I was actually able to get into Oceanside's very first 100% affordable housing unit here and lived there for 13 years, where I started my family, my business, and was able to finish college. So making sure that we have secured housing for our next generation Osiders, for our service industry workers, hitting that housing element at the bottom end is extremely important. And that's going to require us to make tough decisions like rezoning. We need to be building more things like duplexes and middle housing. We need to be streamlining and removing red tape for ADUs within facilities, all while promoting the ideas of being able to get around with micro shuttles, with EVs, with e-bikes, and on micro shuttles, reducing our car dependency. So, and another element of the housing or of the general plan that was concerning was the touting that we were going to be able to create safe routes to school for all of our schools within the district. However, we're only doing one school a year. So that means the majority of our students who need a safe route to school right now are not going to have that way to get to school safely while they're pursuing their K through 12 education. And our community is going to look completely different in 24 years by the time they get through all the schools. So I think it's important that we start looking at changing the way we do transportation and creating. I was on school buses, and then they got rid of those when I was in high school. And now I live in the corridor where El Camino, MLK, and Ivy Ranch is, and I see the congestion and backup every day of parents who have to get their kids to school because it's not safe for them to walk or it's too far away to do those things. So addressing the safe routes to school and making it easier for address the housing needs of our community are important parts that need to be talked about in the general plan.
Thank you. Peter?
To me, there's two, the Smart and Sustainable Corridor Plan and the circulation element. And I don't necessarily disagree with what Omar said, but one of the issues we've had with housing developments, every substantial housing development we've had over the past 7-8 years faces a CEQA lawsuit. So we have an entity in the city that sues every developer, pushes for a reduction in the number of units, which drives up the cost of housing. So at the state level, I think there needs to be CEQA reform that will help streamline some of these projects. But when I say the smart and sustainable corridors, that's where the big push is for density. So they're along those major corridors that have access to transportation and public transportation, we would locate our increased densities. And the circulation element, for me, it's interesting because the same people who complain about traffic are the same ones who didn't want the RDO interchange at 78, who didn't want the extension of Palo Road from El Camino to the shopping center, who didn't want the connection of Plaza from College to El Camino. So when you start taking the big eraser and removing key roadway sections and roadway connectors, of course it increases traffic. And those decisions were made a long time ago, but now we're seeing the effects of those decisions. So as the circulation element comes forward, my push is going to be that we make sure that the entire city circulation system is evaluated and we include projects that will help relieve traffic.
I saw in the news a couple days ago, several days ago, that there is a developer from Utah that is proposing 900 units in the Moon Valley nursery area by El Corazon. Is that the sort of project you think? I realize it's not in front of the council yet or anything else like that. Is that the sort of thing that you have in mind?
So in the Smart and Sustainable Corridors, that is shown as a housing site. And we've not seen an application, it was only a developers conference, but from what I saw, they're going to do 15% affordable, so there'll be a density bonus project. It's highly likely that project may never come to the council because under state law, it would be approved ministerially.
Right. Amber? Same.
Repeat the question?
Yeah, I'm just curious if you had seen the report of the story about a developer proposing about 900 units in the old, or not the old, the Moon Valley nursery area at El Corazon. And it's not in front of the council, not to there's no application yet. I was just curious if that's the sort of thing that you would find conceivably favorable.
I find it conceivably favorable if it meets environmental standards and we have a way to get our community members around. That is a good intersection for people to be able to ride the train, but at the same time, there is that issue of getting across Oceanside Boulevard. Those intersections across Oceanside Boulevard are not very safe for pedestrians. We also just had a huge accident on Rancho Delaware and Oceanside Boulevard last week with an OPD vehicle. People are flying down these roads. And so adding housing in these dense areas or along train lines is what we need to do. It makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but we are a planet of over 8 billion people, and we have to accommodate housing. If we don't build housing, we're just going to have more homeless people. So we need the housing.
Okay. Omar, same, curious.
So I would need more information on that project, and most importantly, how the residents in that area feel. Do they want the housing? What's it going to affect? What are the environmental concerns? I need to see all that information. I personally am not big on huge developments. I don't like them. I like smaller developments, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, 6, 8, 9, ADUs, junior ADUs. I want to see that kind of development where it's affordable to our community. We're missing middle housing. We're missing, I was talking to one of the residents in District 4 the other day, and she said, 40 years ago, it was very easy for my husband and I to purchase our home with very little down. My son makes a 6-figure income, and he lives in my house. He can't afford a home. And that's a 6-figure income. Imagine what the family that's making $50,000 a year right now is going through. And so I'm focused on let's get projects done. We don't need these large, massive scale projects necessarily. We can do it with smaller projects here and there, but let's make it easier for people to develop those projects with the consideration of the community in mind.
Okay, thank you. We're rounding out our hour discussion forum here. We're talking to candidates from District 4, and we've got to hear from you personally. We want to open this up right now to you. We call it an open shot. You get one question that you can ask your opponent for an answer, and one question you'll have to answer. And so we'd like to open it up to Peter first. If you have a question for Amber or Omar, we'd love to hear that, and the viewers and the voters at home can also hear what your concerns are to differentiate you as a candidate.
So one question to both of them, or
one question to either one of
either
them?
One of them? Well, I'll pick on Omar since he's the real estate guy.
Not the real estate guy.
The City Council has heard a number of these density bonus projects over the last several years where developers in in exchange for providing on-site affordable units, get higher densities. Do you, and to me, the state has usurped local control. Do you support those types of density bonus projects where they provide low-income or very low-income units in exchange for higher, more number of market rate units?
Yes, I do support density bonus. I think it's good. I believe the City Council recently passed it for 10 or more units, 15% density bonus. And I think that's a good thing. And it makes sense because let's say it's a three-unit project. Well, you have to understand the cost of a three-unit project. So you can't make 3 units and then make a profit. And like, it's just not sustainable. So it doesn't make any sense. And people have to understand developers, it's a cost to develop, and so we have to incentivize and make it make sense for both sides. And so yes, I do agree with density bonus. I think it's a good thing. It allows us to build more, but I believe medium density is the answer. Not high density, not low density, but medium density is the way we should go.
Okay, thank you. Amber, question to either one of them.
Did you move to Oceanside so that you could run for state assembly?
That's a weird question. I've lived in Oceanside for 10 years. Before that, I was in Carlsbad for 15, and because I was living with my parents, I was young. But no, that's actually a very random question. My only interest is City Council. My only interest is to serve my residents in District 4 and the residents of Oceanside. I don't know what she's talking about with state assembly. I've never ran for a political position in my life.
Did you move to Oceanside to run for office?
I moved to Oceanside 10 years ago. Would I have run for office 10 years ago then?
I've been here 10 years.
Okay, Omar, a question for either.
So I just want to say one thing. I hope the audience is paying attention to the character of the people up here today, because it's very important. To falsely attack someone or accuse them of a false motive is not what we should be doing. We should be here focused on what the residents want. I'm invested in Oceanside. I live in Oceanside with my wife and my daughter. She's going to be growing up here. It's important for me that she grows up in a strong and viable Oceanside. That's all I care about. I care about my neighbors in Rancho del Oro that don't have street lights, and they walk at 7 p.m. at night, and their kids are playing outside, and there's no lighting for them. They're walking around with flashlights.
Omar,
that's why I'm running.
Let me, do you have a question for either of your opponents?
Yes. I'll ask Amber a question. In the beginning of this race, when we decided to run for office, Amber met with me and she asked me to drop out of the race because she raised $15,000. I later looked at that file because it's public, you could go online, and I saw that on that date we had that meeting, she only had $100 donated to her campaign, and it was from herself. And I'm just wondering, why would you do that?
So first of all, since you brought up integrity, that's a complete lie. When we met before this election and last year, I made several attempts to meet with Mr. Hashimi so that we would not be running a split ticket against Peter Weiss. Because in the last election, Peter Weiss won, but he did not get the majority of the votes. If we had not had a split ticket, he would not be our representative today. And I didn't want Oceansiders to be stuck in that position again. Omar basically told me he had too much money and people who donated to him to drop out. I did ask him to wait, but my words were because I was asked by our communities to run, and I've been a resident of District 4 fighting for our community for over 20 years. You just moved here, you don't have roots in this community, take some time and get to know us and know what we really need.
That's not true. I've been involved in Oceanside for over 25 years. Working and living.
We're going to run out of time just really quick here, so we've got to move on to closing statements. So would you start, Omar, no more than 2 minutes?
Sure. My neighbors and District 4 residents, if you're tired of being stuck in traffic on your commute to work because we don't have adequate public transportation, please make sure you pay attention and vote in this election. If you're tired of dealing with the unaffordability in our community, your rents are going through the roof. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, and the majority of your money is going to gas and food, If you own a home right now and your mortgage is at a 5, 6, 7% rate because of lack of housing in our area, I encourage you to please vote. If you're tired of the same council, these are career politicians who have done nothing but serve special interests and the corporations that give them money, please, I encourage you to vote. All of my money in my campaign has come from individual contributors, not a single dollar from a corporation, not a single dollar from a special interest. I'm a candidate for the people of District 4, and I've been around asking District 4 for what their issues are, what their concerns are, and it's all of these things that I'm sharing with you. Your neighbors in Rancho del Oro don't have adequate streetlights, and it's been a battle between their HOA and the city for a decade, and it's time that we stop pushing problems back and forth between community members and the city, and we find solutions. I'm the candidate that's willing to roll my sleeves up and get to work for my fellow community members. I encourage you to please vote for me on November 5th. Again, Omar Hashimi, running for Oceanside City Council District 4. My website is omarforoceanside.com. Thank you very much.
Amber.
Hey Oceansiders, thank you so much for this opportunity to be before you and express my love for this city and my desire to be your representative in District 4. I am a lifelong Oceansider. I graduated from El Camino High School, from Maricosta College. I've been in this community in District 4 specifically for over 20 years and have proven advocacy for our neighborhoods. Yes, Rancho del Oro needs streetlights, and I'm a proven community fighter who can probably get that job done. Not to mention, I have specific ideas in terms of using funding from our soon-to-be established cannabis resources. The same way we have Measure X, I would like to see the tax dollars from that specifically designated towards our transformative Renaissance era, moving into EVs and micro shuttles. We need to create networks for people to be able to take their bikes and electric bikes, sorry, not EVs, e-bikes, to take our e-bikes into specific spaces where they'll be safe, where they can recharge. We should be able to ride from District 4 down the San Luis Rey Riverbed to the harbor and spend the day and get back home. It is my mission to make sure that we have a livable community across all generations. Affordable housing is key. Seniors are our fastest growing homeless population, and in 2034, over 60% of our population will be over the age of 65. We can't wait for that to happen to make the changes in our infrastructure in our city. We need to be forward thinking and doing those things now. I'm both a mother, I will be the only mother on council when elected, and I look forward to being a contributing member of our council and moving forward with our community. I'm proud that my candidacy has been recognized by many important organizations and community leaders along the way. I'm endorsed by Mayor Esther Sanchez, Congressman Mike Levin, several other local representatives in the area and Democratic clubs. I'm endorsed by the Sierra Club. I'm endorsed by the San Diego County and Imperial's Labor Council and several local unions, including Teamsters Council 542, which we worked with to stop the Amazon facility from coming into our district. I'm also supported by Oceanside's own Bruce the Trenchcoat guy. So from the local level to the corporate level, I will represent us. Vote Amber K all the way, Amber KAE, number 4oside.com. I look forward to your vote in November. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Peter.
Thank you. These last few months have been challenging for all of us, the city included. Ongoing inflation is something we are all facing. However, the city, we've adopted a balanced budget, and my focus has been, and if elected will continue to be, maintaining fiscally sustainable policies that support core services. Collaboration and cooperation is desperately needed now. Business, government, civic organizations, and citizens are all going to need to work together to overcome some big challenges. We can do it. We just need to believe that. Once we do, all the rest becomes possible. When you stay focused on what matters, you can make thoughtful decisions from a place of calmness. Good decisions have good outcomes, and good outcomes show that progress is possible. My name is Peter Weiss, City Council candidate for District 4. Thank you for your consideration, and I hope to earn your vote.
Thank you, candidates, for participating in this forum. And I'd like to thank Veterans Association of North County for hosting this and allowing us to be here. We'll be right back in a few minutes for more KOCT election 2024 coverage of the District 3 candidates. In the replays of these forums will be available on koct.org. Amy, a last word?
Yeah, and be sure to subscribe, like, follow, share to the YouTube channel so you don't miss any election coverage this year. It's been a pleasure to host this forum with our candidates today, covering the topics in District 4, things that we all care about. Thank you so much to our viewers at home, especially. Kent, it's been a real pleasure, and we'll be back in just a moment with continuing coverage right here on KOCT.
KOCT, its board of directors, staff, and the City of Oceanside do not support nor promote any candidates. We provide the following program as a public service for voters. All candidates have been invited to participate in this program, but not all were able to or chose to do so.
You're watching KOCT Television in Oceanside.